Hey, this is Marcus Hamaker. I'm the host of the POV podcast. And on today's online prosperity show, we will be talking about what is most valuable in business. We're also going to be talking about the lifestyle mindset versus the growth mindset and other things.
Welcome to another hot steering episode of the Online Prosperity Show, where business wisdom meets everyday relatability. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we're going to be unlocking the treasure chest of business insights with none other than Marcus Hamaker. Now, Marcus, how you doing, my man?
I'm good, sir. How you doing today?
I am doing mighty fine. All the best for meeting you. And for those that are meeting Marcus for the very first time, he's the man who's just not seen the front lines of entrepreneurship, but he's practically built the battleship from growing up in a family business while watching his father on the daily grind to also running multiple businesses of his own. And he's learned a lot of lessons along the way. So what Marcus is bringing to the table is an embodiment of what it means to be a leader and a learner all at the same time. But then here's a twist for those that are watching right now. He's not just about big wins and headlines as you are going to learn. Marcus actually believes that every misstep, every mistake, and every broken bone, yes, literally every broken bone, thanks to his motocross days, shapes the future and the future version of who you are becoming. So you need to embrace that so you too can be, do, and have a business that's profitable and enjoyable. So today he's now he's become the voice behind the POV podcast, where he untangles the mess of modern businesses with clarity, simplicity, and a dash of humor. And his mission is to save 1 million business from stress, confusion, and failure, one episode at a time. Now, Marcus, I could go on and on because there's so much behind what it is that you have done and things of that nature. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your journey so far and what it is that you're working on these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, thank you for your time. I do appreciate it. As you mentioned, grew up in a family business. My dad started a concrete construction business when I was very young. And I remember being 6 years old going to work with my dad. I mean, he just threw me in the truck and took me with him. So front row seat very early on to what it is to manage a business, to run a business, to grow a business. My dad, he's a wonderful man, incredibly diligent, incredibly hardworking. And, I'm 50, going on 54. So this was in the late 70s, early 80s, watching him navigate housing markets that are fluctuating, recessions. I mean, it was pretty intense when I think about what I got to observe, but just seeing the day to day of it in the family, we never really got to sit around a dinner table that didn't have a discussion about business. Everything about the business pretty much filtered throughout our life. And so it was just a tremendous opportunity to learn. I learned through observation. I learned a lot just from watching how things are done. And I got to learn a ton from my dad. So it was a wonderful experience. And then, as I grew up, I got the entrepreneur bug from him and started my own business, started a couple businesses, did some consulting, still do some consulting. And actually the business that I'm CEO of today is a project management and professional services consulting firm. So always had that ability to look at the 10,000-foot view of a company, but then also to drill down. And I think that that's really important.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing that sort of side of you, because I can see maybe a big truck, especially you guys have those big trucks and you're just sitting in the seatbelt on and, going to construction sites and things of that
Yeah.
nature. But didn't you just want to play with kids your age, or was it fascinating for you to actually be on site?
It was fascinating because what Dad did is he did the labor part of it. We didn't mix the concrete, but we actually installed the concrete. So flat work, driveway, sidewalks, foundations, and so I as a kid I got to be around heavy equipment. My dad taught me how to drive a tractor. When I was I think 10. So I learned to operate all the equipment. I was driving his truck when I was really young, because I grew up on a farm and I could drive his truck everywhere. So it was very intriguing to me. But yeah, I did want to do normal kid stuff, but understand that to me that was the normal kid stuff, right? I didn't know any
Mm,
better.
No, you
So
see, Marcus, my
um,
dad.
yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Fantastic. You see, my dad was a cop, and I would see him
Uh,
doing whatever he was doing, interrogating, investigating, and all those things that he would do because he ended up becoming a detective. But I
oh
vowed
wow,
I'd never want to be in that sort of profession. So, you being so close to your father's business, how did that then shape
yeah.
your views on entrepreneurship?
Well, I threw down the gauntlet too growing up because I remember being in high school. Dad's like, "You're going to work." I'm like, "Oh no, I'm not." And of course, I went because I didn't have an option. And I vowed I would never do it because I hated it. I hated construction. But what do you think I did when I got older? I started a construction company. So, I get it. But I look back on it and I loved it because I like physical labor. I know a lot of people don't. I enjoy it. Well, I used to enjoy it. I can't do it anymore now because I'm old. But it's just it was a part of me. I just really enjoyed it. I loved it.
Was it easy then for you to, just start your own business, or did you have to go through some sort of learning curve and things of that
It,
nature?
it was fairly simple to actually start it, to get the entity, to get everything. And then honestly, to get the work was actually probably the biggest challenge in my mind. But, you pound the pavement. And one of the things that I vowed, growing up after, well, let me take a step back. One of the things I vowed once I got older was looking back at the construction industry and how a lot of people in the construction industry weren't very professional. Now, keep in mind, this was the 70s and 80s. A lot of guys thought that they could just throw the name on the side of a truck and, that was their marketing, right? So when I started my business, I actually built out a portfolio of previous jobs that I had done. I wanted to be very professional. I wanted to dress well, even though I was in construction, right? I wanted to present well, dress well, be as professional as I could. One of my core values was that I would always pick up the phone and I would always respond because, again, what I saw growing up is that construction guys were notorious for not returning phone calls or not responding. They just get busy and they would go. So I wanted to answer every phone call, respond to every email. I mean, that was one of the things that I focused on, and that's how I grew my business relatively quickly, honestly, because I was the guy picking up the phone. I was calling people back within 24 hours. And so to me, that customer experience was a big, big deal. And it still is today to me, honestly.
You see, Marcus, I also work with a few people in the trades, and one of the things that normally happens is once someone has got the job, they're good. They
Hmm.
don't really care about
Yeah,
what then happens after that. But it's
right.
the process in between, like you say, not picking up phones or whatever it is. Is it just something that happens in the construction industry, or is it just across anybody who's doing business?
My opinion is it's in the construction industry probably more, and my thought behind it is because typically guys that start construction businesses or that are in the trades, they're just kind of no nonsense. Let's go do work, right? And there's a side of business that they're not taught, and if you're not inherently able to figure it out, it's going to be a challenge. And I look at what my dad, what he struggled with. Dad was a producer. He could work, he could produce, he was really good with people. He was not good with follow up. He was not good with calling people back. He would do it eventually, but it wasn't like, hey, I got to call this guy back within 24 hours. It was, I'll get to him when I can. And I just think that that's the culture of construction. It's might have changed, since I was in construction, of, what, 10 years ago now. But I think that if you want to be successful in business, you have to understand the customer experience. A customer is trying to give you money. you want to receive money. That's the point of doing business, right? So you need to make it as easy as possible for a customer to provide revenue to you and your business. And one of the best ways to do that is to have open communication. And I think that a lot of people struggle with that, especially when they get busy. And I think that that's the wrong mentality, because if you're busy and you can build a backlog of work, what more would you want? Knowing that you could look out 6 months going, you know what? I've got job lined up. I mean, that's the epitome of a good business, in my view, is that you've got a backlog of people that want to do business with you. They want to give you money. That's pretty sweet. That's the way it should be.
Absolutely. I like that. Make it easier for people to pay you, because that's the
Yeah.
whole reason for you being in business, to
Right.
count the money. But not only did you have this front row seat on the with your dad, but as a consultant, as you
Mhm.
grew, you also managed to
Yeah.
see other businesses as well. Now, a lot of people are making these mistakes, and a lot of people are obviously becoming a statistic. Like, we know
Mhm.
that very few people go past the 3-year mark. What do you reckon are some of the
Yeah.
blind spots that you see holding them back, especially when it comes to, like you said, counting the money?
Yeah. Well, there's a ton. I think the primary issue that business owners run into is it's a mindset issue. So there's this thing called a lifestyle business, right? And then there's a growth business. And I have an episode on my podcast about this. And I didn't even really understand this until about 10, 15 years ago. And a lifestyle business is a business that somebody starts because they've got a passion about something, or they've got a skill set, and so they start a business, right? And they're not really thinking about it as a business; they're thinking about it as something that they can do for a job, right? And that's fine. But when you talk to people that want to scale a business, you can't think of you as the business. You are not the business as the business owner. Now, there's certain skill sets that you bring to the table, your entrepreneurship, your drive, your passion, whatever. But if a person wants to scale and grow a business, they have to take themselves out of the equation and build a structured entity that can grow and scale without them. Because if you don't do that, your limitation is you. And what I've seen time and time again is that the owner operator has this idea of what he wants his business to look like, but he can never get out of the way. And that could be, maybe he lacks a skill set. Maybe he's not the greatest at finance. Maybe he's not the greatest at marketing, but he's good. He's able to run a business. I look at my dad. He was a wonderful producer. This man could flat out produce work. He was really good with his employees, but his administrative skill set was really bad. And that's what always held him back. And so being able to say, okay, I want to start a business and I want it to go beyond me, right? That's the American dream, at least for a lot of people. Grow a business, scale it, maybe one day sell it or pass it on. You won't be able to sell a business or pass it on if it's all based on you. And honestly, that's one of the biggest things that I see. Now, when you look at a growth business, it's a separate entity. It's designed to scale and grow. Um, a lot of the earnings are reinvested for future growth, for investment. And it's this structure that is a going concern. That's the proper term for a business anyway, that can be autonomous. And so if the owner operator is not there, it should be able to go because processes are in place. You've got a structure, there's reporting, there's an org chart that lines up, there's a communication landscape. And so it's really about the mindset of the business owner. That's what I've learned over my years in business. And when I think back to when I ran my business, I looked at what I saw my dad do and said, okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this. But then I look back and it's like, man, I missed it here. I missed it here. I missed it here. Right. And so now that I'm consulting for companies, I've got more of a 10,000-foot view of saying, okay, what's the big picture here? What are you really trying to accomplish? And we've actually gone into some businesses where the owner will say, hey, I want to grow. And we put a plan together for scale and for growth. And what the owner learns is that he's the issue. It's the way he manages. It's the way that he runs his business. Maybe he's a micromanager. Maybe he doesn't feel comfortable delegating. Maybe he doesn't know how. And so it's really interesting. It honestly is.
Mm. Now, Marcus, I don't know if you've got this statement over there. A lot of business people always come to the conclusion, if anything is to be done correctly, I, the business person, would have to do it. You
Yeah,
know, like
yeah, yeah,
like you're
yeah,
saying, and things of that nature.
yeah.
And so many people they're the ones that know their business more than anything else, or they're passionate about their business. What would you
Hmm.
say to people that obviously can't let go, because you, as you're saying, you can't climb the ladder of success with your hands full?
Yeah. I, I understand that statement, and there was a time in my life where I was that guy too. It's like, I got to do it myself. I got to do it myself. And I came upon a situation when I owned my business that I was literally getting up in the morning, you know, 5 a.m., going to the job, pouring concrete, making sure my guys had everything in front of them so they could be productive, going back, doing quotes, doing estimates, going home, spending some time with the family, and then paying bills. So I was literally working from 5 a.m. until 10 o'clock at night because I was the guy doing everything, right? I had to do it myself. And then I determined that I needed to hire an administrative assistant. And the hardest thing for me was to slow down enough to train that person. But I knew, because I had some wise guys in my life, some wise men that were older than me that I went to for mentoring, and I said, "Listen, you have to slow down to train this person, because once you do that, it will provide so much freedom for you." And so I actually did that. I took a time out. I spent a week, 2 weeks training this person, got her all up to speed, and I can't even tell you the relief that it gave me. And it freed me up to quote more jobs, to be in front of my guys more, to be in front of customers more. So I get the mentality. You got to do it all yourself. But here's my statement to that now. That's dumb. With
Mm.
all due respect, what you need to do is set up a system to where you can train people so you can duplicate yourself, so you can train people so you can do more. Because again, back to my earlier point, if you're going to be the ceiling, that's the best there is. And I know enough now that I want good people around me. I want people better than me around me. I want the team. I want the A team. I want the starters. And if it's all going to be dependent on me, that's kind of a bummer. I want to invite people in. I want to train them up. I want them to excel past me. I want to be the floor, so they can have a higher ceiling. And I think that's the right way to do it, especially in a growth business. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room.
What I'm hearing from you is, if you want to go far, you go alone. But if you want to go further, you go together. Because so many people, yeah,
Yeah.
like you're saying, if I would take an example of your dad, he would rather have you sitting on the side, because then he could just pass on a few jobs to you, knowing he doesn't have to
Hmm.
maybe train somebody else or pay them a bigger fee, just so
Yeah.
that they can keep much off the
Yeah.
the collected
Yeah.
amount.
And yeah, and to that point, one of the biggest, I think, reasons why this happens is that when you think about training a person, you've got to list out a role and responsibility for somebody. So let's just talk about an administrative assistant. What is that person going to do every day? As a business owner, I need to sit down for 15 minutes and write out a list. This is what that person is going to do. This is what they're going to be responsible for. You have to slow down to go fast. I mean, you really do. And that's an old racing term. But you got to slow down to go fast. And if I can slow down enough to write out a list of responsibilities for this person I'm going to hire, and then I'm going to spend a week and I'm going to train that person, give them as much as I can to make them successful. And then I'm going to support them, scaffold them in a way where they can be successful. That person can literally duplicate what I was doing. And so think about that from a business owner standpoint. What are the things that you want to accomplish that you haven't been able to because you're too busy just doing your day-to-day stuff? And that's the difference between a growth mindset and a lifestyle mindset. And it's pretty dramatic. It really, really is.
You see, when it comes to things like this, I mean, as a consultant, you be able to see the three, the full view of what's actually happening.
Hmm.
Fish don't quite see the water that they actually swim in up until
Sure.
maybe a hook comes in front and they're like, oh, wait a minute, where am I?
Right.
And so you talk mainly, I think it's on your podcast, that you want people to focus on what's truly valuable. First of all, how does somebody
Mhm.
determine what that is? Because, as long as the work is being done, invoices are being, put out there and being paid, some people don't quite see where the bottleneck is, like you've mentioned.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. So when I think about what's truly valuable, I've got to look in the mirror and say, okay, what is my vision for my company? What is my mission for my company? What's truly important to me? And one of the things that I hear more than anything is I want to grow my business. I want to, because us as humans, we always want more, right? And so as a business owner, if I'm generating $1 million a year, I want to generate $2 million a year. I want to generate five. I want 10. And so there's always this craving for more in business that I've seen. So, but when you really sit down and talk to that person who wants to grow and ask them what's most important, is growing most important to them? And usually it's not. What's most important is what's been comfortable. And I'll let that sink in for a minute. It's not what's important, it's what's comfortable. So I'll use my example or me as an example. I love a clean inbox in I get emails all day long and I get really stressed out if I've got, 100 emails. I find myself gravitating more often than not trying to clean that bad boy up. And that's not what's important. It's not valuable, it's not important, but it's comfortable to me, right? And so I've got to I've got to condition myself that, you know what, that can wait. I've scheduled it for 3 o'clock. I'm not touching my emails until 3. I got to focus on this strategic planning session for a new customer. It's really being disciplined and understanding what's going to provide the most valuable thing to you and your business. And to some people, honestly, it could be comfort. I met a gentleman one time who wanted to grow his business. We put all these things in place, and he was really good at what he did. He was very motivated. But what we learned through the process of developing the plan is that he loved to micromanage and he didn't like trusting people. He wanted to do it himself. And so we came to this conclusion. It's like, you know what, bud, you don't want to grow then. And he's like, you know what, you're right. I don't want to be big. But what a beautiful thing that he was able to come to that conclusion. But there's people all over the place that have this itch that they can't scratch of growing their business because they're not able to focus on what's important, what's really valuable to them. So for this gentleman, in the end, what was most valuable is that he wanted to lay his head on his pillow at night, feel comfortable about what he accomplished during the day. He's in control. He doesn't have to put a lot of trust out there, and he's running a good business. It's fine for him. But now the growth thing is off the table, and that was important to him. But there's other people, like I said, that, man, they stress about not being able to grow, and it's because they're focused on the wrong thing.
Mm. But if you really
Hope
look at
that
it,
made sense.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, the stats though are scary about the people that actually cannot, succeed in business or business
Yeah,
failure. I mean, 30% in
yeah,
2 years, maybe 50%, 5 years, and pretty much 70% in the 10-year mark. So, in the
yeah.
experience that you've had, I mean, obviously being a kid growing up and now you being a consultant and also working with other people, is it just something that could actually just flip those odds? Because I think we should have been able to solve for that by now.
Man, that's a great point. I don't know if it's something that can flip. It really is a mindset thing, and when you think about what it takes to change a mindset, that's a pretty heavy lift.
Mm.
I watched my dad, struggle with it most of his life. I'm a guy that I love to learn. I like change, and it's hard for me to change my mindset. I mean, I really got to have something hit me upside the head. Now, I think it's possible. I really do. But I always say this. The business owner has to look in the mirror. And what I mean by that is you got to look in the mirror and you got to just really get very transparent, and you got to dig in. You really got to ask yourself some hard questions. And, for me as an owner, or for me as a CEO, I just had this conversation today. I want my people to give me an evaluation, right? And I've had plenty of these. I've had my employees evaluate me, and every time you go into it, it's like, oh man, Do I really want everybody's opinion on my leadership? Yeah, I do because I want to learn, but I know it's going to be hard. I know it's going to be uncomfortable. I know I'm not perfect. I know that I got gaps I got to make up, but you know what? If I stay in my own comfortable little headspace and just think everything's okay and I never get critical feedback from people that I care about and trust, then eh, I don't think that that's right. So yes, it's going to be uncomfortable, but that is more important than just being, kind of numb to it all and not really thinking about it and kind of sweeping it under the rug. And so I think for business owners, you have to be able to say, okay, what am I going to work for each day? What is my vision? What is my mission here? What is my long-term goal with this company that I own? Do I want to pass it on to my kids? I know a lot of business owners that are like, no, it's not going to happen. My kids won't work with me and I will not pass it on. Okay, great. Why though? I mean, why are you living this life that you're living? And I think that if you can get really honest with yourself as a business owner, you can peel back some of these layers and really figure some things out. One of the statistics that I mentioned is only 1 in 10 companies will have revenues over $1 million, but yet 99.9% of all businesses are small businesses. So most of the businesses out there make less than $1 million a year. It's intriguing to me. There's so many of them, but really they're not scaling. They're just not.
Absolutely. So obviously, from what you're saying, it's a mindset issue. It's also the delegation, and you've sort of dabbled with, concepts of leadership and things of that nature. Because for a business to actually
Mhm.
then get to that 1 million mark, the business owner has to be able to lead, the business to that end. So you've had an
Mhm.
opportunity to sort of observe business owners as both the consultant and the peer and the son.
Mhm.
What's something
Yeah.
that you've actually learned about leadership just by watching others?
Man, I've been around some tremendous leaders in my life, and the ones that have been really successful understood very early what they were good at and what they were not good at. I knew a gentleman that started up, um, and I need to be careful here. He started up a very large company in a foreign country, and he didn't speak the language and could barely use a computer. And but what he was really good at was bringing in people that were really good. And so he had a skill set that he understood with his limitations, and he was able to maximize that. And I think that that's one of the key things on leaders. And then there's the other end of the spectrum where I got to do it all myself. I don't feel comfortable trusting somebody. Or the person's got to be the smartest person in the room, and I've worked for people like that too, and it's a huge dichotomy between the two because the guys that understand their weakness well, understand their strengths well, they just seem like they operate in much more freedom as opposed to the guys that have to control it all, don't want to recognize it, and are really closed off. And so it's super interesting.
Now, Marcus, I resonate with the guy that came in from another country. Although I can speak the language and use the computers, but not a lot
Yeah.
that that I can do. So, which is why I've relegated my part of the business to just running the podcast and doing the consulting, because it only involves me talking to people, which I think it's something that I'm really good at. Now, one of your core beliefs and what you just spoke about right now is being very cognizant of what and doing that well within the business. And you talk about running a business shouldn't be so complex and stressful. you know
Mhm.
Tell us, how do you then personally manage to do this while running, is it three businesses at the moment?
Two, almost
Two
three.
now, yeah, yes.
Yeah. Well, again, it goes back for me. It's about being organized. Like I like to be organized. I use Asana, as my project management, but my personal project management platform. I like to keep things organized. So being able to keep things in front of me, but then also delegating. Like I've, here at Boost USA, we've got a tremendous team of people here that are really good at what they do. For the Pursuit of Value podcast, I've got a girl that works with me on that she's really good at what she does. And so it's, again, it goes back to knowing what you're good at, knowing what you're not, and then getting the right people in the right place. And we have precedent for that every day. So, I'm a big college football, American football fan. This last Saturday was, awesome college football. When you look at all these professional teams, it takes a team to go far, right? It takes skilled people in the right places, all putting their head down, digging in and executing. And it's no different than a business. I mean, one of the things that I really focus on in any business I'm in is we can plan all day long. We can talk about it, we can plan, but you know what? We're going to execute. What are you doing today to execute against the plan that we talked about? And that's what I hold my people accountable to, is like, what are you doing this week? What are you doing today that's going to accomplish what you wrote down? Like, let's talk about it. Let's have that conversation, and holding them accountable to it, because that's how they're going to be successful too. And then they hold me accountable for my part. And that's important.
Absolutely. I mean, all plan and no action, it's just a waste of everybody else's time that's
Waste.
available. And you
Absolutely.
you're on a mission, right? To help 1 million businesses grow every month. It's such a
Yeah.
big deal.
That's
Such
a
a big
lot.
deal. Now, what are you doing to get this going? Like, what systems or strategies that have you put in place to actually achieve this, and how far are you with this goal?
Yeah. So really the podcast was born out of, what I do want to help. I love small business. I saw what it did for my family growing up. I believe that small business could be the greatest force for good, and not just small business, but just business in general. I can be the greatest force for good in our world, and I'll explain that a little bit. When you look at a small company like my dad's company, he had 15 employees, I think, guys that were with him and our family, and Dad was able to create this machine that lasted 40 years until he retired. He was helping support families through the vendors that Dad did business with. He was providing them income. He was providing a service that people wanted, and so in his little world that he existed in, he provided so much value. And when I think of the company that I'm in, I can bless my employees. I can bless our customers with a really good customer experience, or our employees with a really good employee experience. Our community, we like to get involved in our community here. So, for Christmas, we're going to be putting some bikes together for some local charities. And so there's so much good that we can do. Why not? Right? If you're a business owner, you've got this tremendous opportunity to take care of your employees, your vendors, your customers, your community. Why not do that? So when I think of the good, like I get passionate about that. And then one of my favorite books is The Search for God in Guinness, and that was written by Stephen Mansfield. And that book is the story of Guinness Brewery, Guinness Beer Company, and the impact it had on Ireland because of how the Guinness family ran their business. And it's amazing what can be done. It truly is. One business can make a huge difference in its circle of influence. And then you look at the numbers. In the US, 3 to 4 million businesses are started every year. There's over 400 million businesses worldwide. Think about that. That's huge. And just drive down the street, business after business after business after business, right? It's everywhere. So if, as a business owner, you can focus on running a really good business, sidestepping the pitfalls that most people get into, that's what my podcast is about. Is I want to bring clarity, and I want to shine a spotlight on some things that most people don't think about. And that would be mindset. That would be growth business versus lifestyle, value.
Now, if somebody feels like, after watching this or reading or listening to this podcast, and they feel like they're like one in that million types of
Mhm.
businesses that you want to help grow every month, where would they start? Or what's the best place for them to see how you can be able to help them?
Yeah, well, it's the povpodcast.com. That's the website. And on the website, you can we've got links to all the podcast platforms, and you can also look at the podcast on that website. And then I also have some summary sheets after each episode because I want to also provide value in terms of points that we talked about, so people can print those off and go over them with their team members, talk about them with management. And then I'm also in the process. I just started writing a blog that I'm going to start putting out every week as well. That'll be on the website as well.
Absolutely. I'll make sure that all those links are in the show notes below, and
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
definitely get people coming your way. Now, Marcus, if somebody was, hanging on to say, did this guy even have a childhood? Because all we just introduced you as was the little kid that was
I,
sitting next to dad all the time.
I
You
had a
you had
great
a
childhood.
Yeah, you had a stint with motocross. I mean, from
I did.
age
Yeah.
7 to 15 and breaking bones. Tell us, how did that sort of experience teach you about
It
business
was,
and resilience?
yeah, it was awesome. I grew up on a farm, and so I had go-karts. We had probably 5 acres of grass, lawn around, and so if I wasn't riding the go-kart, I was mowing the lawn with the riding lawnmower, or I was on my motorcycle. And so at the age of 7, my dad actually raced and said, "Hey, do you want to race?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's race." And so I fell in love with it. I'm a petrol head. I love cars and all the stuff. And so I started racing, and I just loved it. And so every weekend we were traveling all over the Pacific Northwest. I grew up in Oregon. We were going to Washington, Oregon, Idaho. And every weekend I was racing, and I got pretty good. But when you crash hard because you're going pretty fast. And I broke my leg, my wrist, my arm, my ribs, my collarbone. And then finally at 15, after I broke my collarbone, I told my parents I was done. And I needed to save for a car anyway. So so yeah,
Uh,
it was awesome. But what it taught me was competition. Loved it, determination. And then obviously how to overcome some pretty painful situations and disappointment, pain. It was a good lesson growing up.
what I like about that is consequences. Every action has, if you're going to be
Yeah,
riding on a bike and you don't do the right thing, there's going to be consequences with that.
big ones.
I don't believe a lot of kids these days are exposing themselves to a lot of that. It's all games and softer playgrounds, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Now, talking about kids not, learning stuff as they grow. If you could go back to that, Motorhead, Daredevil, Marcus, young Marcus there, what's the
yeah.
one key lesson before you took your first big leap that you'd want to have learned, at least that would have put you on a different path, or, made your life a smoother landing, so to speak?
Yeah, I think the big thing was, just don't give up and learn how to take a punch. I mean, when I think of life lessons, to me, failure is when you give up. I mean, people make mistakes all day long. It's the best education. Education is expensive no matter what, whether you're paying tuition or whether you're breaking a bone, right? So really understand that giving up is the true failure, and so I hope that people learn that they hear that giving up isn't right. You should always keep going, and then knowing that you're going to get punched in life, and being prepared for that doesn't shock the system. You were talking about some of these kids today, and the same thing. I think that there's a generation that doesn't know how to take a punch, and that they get nudged, and it's like, oh my gosh, life is over. And man, those can be the biggest blessings in a person's life to truly go through some hardship, because it shapes you if you allow it. But a lot of people don't allow it. They just get numb to it, or they get fearful, and they run away from pain. And I don't think that that's right. I think you got to lean into it.
Absolutely. Well, Marcus, this has been a nice ride. I mean, obviously getting to know you a little bit, and knowing where you've been and what it is that you've been working on. But what's next? What can people anticipate now that you've introduced us to Marcus? What can we anticipate in the future?
Well, I'm going to be spending a lot of time on the podcast. That's really important to me. It is a passion. So that's going to continue to grow, and we're going to do, more things with that. And then, really just helping businesses as much as I can with my current position as CEO of Boost USA. Um, we're doing a lot of stuff helping companies move over from Europe to the USA. That's a big deal, is onshoring, and so that's been fun. And again, I just love business, and I like doing the podcast, and so it's all a learning experience for me in terms of the podcast, but the business side of it, it's just cool to meet business owners, new people, and to see how they're doing it, and to help as much as we can.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, I can't thank you enough for the time that we spent on the call today. I mean, your
Yeah.
life story and your experience have so much value for a lot of business owners out there, and I can't wait to start counting the millions that you're going to be impacting as you go along with the POV podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Now, folks, if you did not get at least three aha moments from this episode, I want you to rewatch it again because I think Mark has just dropped more gems than a pirate's treasure chest. Okay. I mean, from understanding what truly is valuable in business to learning how to overcome the fear of actually making those big decisions, there's just so much to unpack. Now, if anything, I want to give you an action plan from this because, like Marcus says, you can plan, but if you don't execute, nothing is going to actually, come out of that. So the first thing I encourage you to do is rewatch this episode or re-listen to it because you can never catch all the gold the very first time. And if you actually did, I encourage you to share this with somebody that's actually struggling with decision fatigue, business overwhelm, or that dreaded what's next feeling, because this could be just a perspective shift that they needed to finally make their move. And if somebody has shared this video or podcast with you, just give them a big hug because you should actually appreciate those that put you in line with the right people and the right message, especially at the right time. Now, Marcus, I think I can't thank you enough for obviously your transparency, your story, and everything else that comes along with it. And to everybody else watching, just remember that you're just one brave decision away from a completely different business future. See you next time on the Online Prosperity Show. Bye for now.